know you both agree with me on that. I'd like to shift quickly, if I could, to the integrity of the report which the previous DNI, when he determined, along with your acquiescence, I might add, both of you, that Russia developed a clear preference for Mr. Trump, and this is a huge deal. I mean, think about this story. The American people have been told, and some believe, that our president was elected maybe because of the influence of a foreign government. And I love you guys, you know that, and I defend you, and we respect what you do. But I do need to make this point, and that is the intelligence community is not perfect, is it?
Not perfect?
Yes.
Certainly not.
Certainly not.
I can speak for me. I don't know. He might be
right.
Perfect.
Mr. Rogers, I'll allow you to answer the same question.
I am not, or same as the director.
And as has been indicated here, and look, again, that's not a criticism. It's just the human endeavor. We sometimes make mistakes, as do agencies sometimes make mistakes, and all of us can think of examples of that, including meaningful mistakes, by the way, mistakes that had clear implications for our policy. And as has been indicated here as well, there's a difference in level of confidence. Mr. Comey, you have a higher degree of confidence in this report than you do, don't you, Mr. Rogers?
To be specific, a different level of content on one specific assessment or judgment.
Understand.
But a concurrence overall in that judgment.
But that one judgment, that one is a very important part of this report. And if I could make just this last point, and this is an important point, I think, and that is the difficulty of determining motive. I mean, we can go back, we can look at facts, we can look at what happened, we can often determine who did it, who they did it with, when they did it, but to determine motive, you've got to crawl inside someone's head. And that's much, much more difficult. In fact, quoting from the preamble in this report, talking about a leader's intentions, it says, this objective is difficult to achieve when seeking to understand complex issues in which foreign actors go to extraordinary lengths to hide and obfuscate their activities. Once again, we're trying to determine motive, which is very difficult. Do you agree with that? That determining motive is one of the most difficult challenges when it comes to an intelligence analysis?
I do, Mr. Stewart. And I should emphasize something that Admiral Rogers said earlier. We made no judgment on whether the Russians were successful in any way in having an impact on the election. I just want to be clear. That's not in the report because we didn't opine on it. We didn't. That's not within our
I understand that, but we're looking at Russian activities and we're making a conclusion of why they did that. In this case, sure, that they preferred one candidate over the other. I was in Moscow last August. I came home and I did some media interviews and talked to some folks, and I said, they're going to mess with our elections. And that wasn't based on any intelligence analysts or specific information. It was just based on history. We knew that they would. And I was always asked, well, who do they want to win? And I said then, I don't think they care. I don't think they, could believe they could determine who would win. And others, as we've said here a number of times, they just want to break down the foundation. They just want to break the trust in our institutions. They want to take away that faith we have in our electoral process. And by the way, the intelligence community agreed with us, with me on that analysis, for a long, long time, up until December. And then suddenly they didn't. And that was when the president asked for this report, and he asked for it to be concluded very quickly, and then the analysis changed entirely. And it went from, no, they don't really care, to, no, they want Mr. Trump to win. And I think there's another plausible explanation, which is what I want to talk about in the few minutes I have remaining. Let me begin by asking you, do you think that the Russians expected Secretary Clinton to win the election?
Yes, as of August, certainly. August, September.
Okay, Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Comey, you indicated as of August, September. Do you believe they ever came to a conclusion that, you know what, Mr. Trump's going to win?
No, the assessment of the intelligence community was that early on, they thought he might have a shot. And so they wanted to mess with our election, hurt our country in general. That's always the baseline. They hated her, Secretary Clinton, wanted to harm her, and thought it might have a chance to help Mr. Trump, and then later concluded that Mr. Trump, it was hopeless, and they would focus then on just trying to undermine Secretary Clinton, especially with the European allies.
Got that. So up until summer and through the fall, they believed that Secretary Clinton would win. Is that true?
I think the assessment was late in the summer, they concluded, based on the polling I think a lot of people were reading, that Mr. Trump didn't have a chance. and they shifted to just focusing on just trying to undermine her.
And I tell you, if you were to tell me, and I know you didn't, but I'm just saying, if anyone were to tell me that they concluded Mr. Trump was going to win, I'd just say they're nuts. Because there was no one in the world who thought that. Every media organization, every political organization, every government organization that I'm familiar with last fall thought that Secretary Clinton would be the next president of the United States.
I think the Russians agreed.
Absolutely, they did agree. Then this is the point, and this is such a fine line, but it's such an important point. And that is, how can you know for certainty if the Russians were motivated by hurting the person that they thought, in fact, fully expected was going to be the next president of the United States, and comparing that with the motive of this kind of a Hail Mary pass, you know what, maybe this guy's got a shot, let's try and help him get elected. Because those motives would be, and that's again, coming back to my original point, determining motives is very difficult. You have to either have very direct information, or you have to be able to get inside someone's head and really figure out what it is that's driving them. And knowing the Russians expected Secretary Clinton to win, would you see that some of those things that they've done would be consistent with undermining her presidency, not necessarily because they thought Mr. Trump was going to win and they wanted to help him?
Again, I think it's two closely related sides of the same coin. I mean, to put it in a homely metaphor, I hate the New England Patriots. And no matter who they play, I'd like them to lose. And so I'm at the same time rooting against the Patriots and hoping their opponent beats them, because there's only two teams on the field. But what the intelligence community concluded was, early on, the hatred for Mrs. Clinton was all the way along.
Yep.
When Mr. Trump became the nominee, there was some sense that it'd be great if he could win, it'd be great if we could help him, but we need to hurt her no matter what. And then it shifted to, he has no chance, so let's just focus on undermining her. That was the judgment of the intelligence community.
Well, I'd also, if I could highlight, I acknowledge the challenge at times about trying to understand intent. But the level of, we're not going to go into specifics in an open, unclassified form, but the level of sourcing, the multiple sources we had, which were able to independently corroborate the judgment. And there's a reason why we were high confidence in everything except just one issue, to include the intent.
I understand. I spent some time out at the CIA last week. I was with the staff as best we could through the 2,000 some odd pages. And by the way, not many people did. And some people are casting, aspersions in and not making the effort to go out there and actually look at that. But I'm telling you that having done that, I think a reasonable person could say what I've said here today, that there is another element to this, that there is another, as you said, Mr. Comey, another side of the coin. And this is a very, very difficult, in my opinion, thing to say with high levels of confidence, which is why, once again, the intelligence community isn't perfect sometimes. And we do make mistakes. And, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. I'd like to come back for just a few minutes if we could after.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Schiff's recognized. Thank you. Just a couple of quick follow-up questions by myself and Mr. Himes, and then we'll go to Mr. Castro. Director, you were asked about Director Clapper's comments, and I think your response indicated that they were correct as far as the unclassified intelligence assessment goes.
Yeah, that's what I understood the question to be about the report itself.
I want to make it clear to people, though, the intelligence assessment, the unclassified intelligence assessment, doesn't discuss the issue of U.S. person coordination with the Russians, and I assume that's because at the time of the report in January of this year, that was under an investigation that you have now disclosed. Is that right?
Correct. The counterintelligence investigation is the FBI's business. The IC report was about what the intelligence community had about what Russia had done. So there is nothing in the report about coordination or anything like that. It's a separate responsibility of the FBI to try and understand that, investigate it, and assess it.
So we shouldn't read Mr. Clapper's comments as suggesting that he takes a different view of whether you had sufficiently credible information and evidence to initiate a FBI counterintelligence investigation.
I don't know exactly what he meant. All I can say is what the fact is, which is we just laid out. There's the report, and then there's our investigation.
And the report doesn't cover the investigation?
Correct.
Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Schiff. Gentlemen, in my original questions to you, I asked you whether the intelligence community had undertaken any sort of study to determine whether Russian interference had had any influence on the electoral process, and I think you told me the answer was no.
Correct.
Correct. We said the U.S. intelligence community does not do analysis or reporting on the U.S. political process or U.S. public opinion. That is
Okay.
not our fault.
So thanks to the modern technology that's in front of me right here, I've got a tweet from the president an hour ago saying the NSA and FBI tell Congress that Russia did not influence the